two countries have spent nearly a century at war over this. Not land, not money, this. A cake made of egg whites, sugar and fruit. Australia says they invented it. New Zealand says that's a lie, and they claim they've got the receipts to prove it. But here's what neither side will tell you. By the end of this video, two researchers are going to walk in with the actual evidence and prove that both countries have been wrong this whole time. To understand the fight, you have to start with the woman the dessert is named after. And she wasn't Australian or a New Zealander. Her name was Anna Pavlova, a Russian ballerina. And in the 1920s, she was arguably the most famous dancer alive, a genuine international superstar in an age before film stars existed. In 1926 and again in 1929, she toured Australia and New Zealand, and the reaction was hysteria. People lined the streets. Her visit was described as one of the most anticipated events of the decade. And somewhere on that tour, as the story goes, a chef looked at her, at the lightness of her dancing, and decided to build a dessert in her honor, something as light and airy as she was. A meringue that's crisp on the outside, but soft, like marshmallow, in the middle, piled with cream and fresh fruit. That part everyone agrees on. The dessert is named after Anna Pavlova, and that is just about the last thing these two countries agree on. Because the moment you ask which chef, in which country, in which year, the whole thing detonates. Let's start with New Zealand, because on paper, their case looks strong. For decades, New Zealand has argued something simple. We wrote it down first. And in a fight about who invented something, the oldest written recipe is about as close to a smoking gun as you can get. Enter Professor Helen Leach, a culinary anthropologist at the University of Otago, and arguably the world's leading authority on this dessert. In 2008, she published an entire book on it, The Pavlova Story. She didn't just claim New Zealand was first, she went and built the case, recipe by recipe. And what she found is the thing New Zealanders will bring up at a barbecue to win an argument. Leach collected hundreds of Pavlova recipes and counted 21 of them in New Zealand cookbooks before the very first Australian recipe even showed up, around 1940. 21-0. That's not a typo. And then came the knockout blow. The Oxford English Dictionary, yes, that Oxford, looked into it and traced the first recorded Pavlova recipe to New Zealand in 1927. To a lot of people, that settled it. Oxford said New Zealand. 21 recipes to 0. Game over. Print the t-shirts. Except there's a catch in that 1927 recipe, and it's a big one. Here's the problem. That 1927 recipe, the one Oxford pointed to, the one that supposedly wins the war, wasn't the Pavlova you're picturing. It appeared in a book called Davis Dainty Dishes, published by a gelatine company. And the Pavlova in it was a multicolored jelly. A jelly, not a meringue. Not crisp, not soft in the middle, not topped with cream. A completely different dessert that just happened to share the name. And this is where the whole argument cracks open and gets genuinely fascinating. Because what is a Pavlova, really? If the oldest written record is a jelly, then who wrote the name down first might be the wrong question entirely. It's like two towns fighting over who invented the sandwich, and one of them produces an old document that just says the word sandwich next to a recipe for soup. Now, to be fair to New Zealand, the meringue version shows up there pretty soon after, a 1929 recipe that's much closer to the real thing. So New Zealand still has the earliest claim to both the name and the meringue. But earliest written recipe and invented it are not the same thing. And that gap is exactly where Australia charges in, with a name, a hotel, and a date. Australia's claim is more specific, and in some ways more confident. The year is 1935. The place, the Esplanade Hotel in Perth. A chef named Herbert Bert Saxer is asked to come up with something new for the afternoon tea menu. What he produces is the crisp-shelled, soft-scented meringue we'd recognize today as a pavlova. And the legend goes that when the hotel manager, Harry Nairn, saw it, he remarked that it was as light as pavlova, and the name stuck. It's a great origin story, a named chef, a named hotel, a specific dish that matches the modern pavlova. There's just one problem for Australia. 1935 is later than New Zealand's recipes. Years later. So even if Bert Saxer perfected the version we eat today, he almost certainly wasn't the first to put the name pavlova on a meringue. So look at where we are. New Zealand has the older name, first attached to a jelly. Australia has a beautifully documented dessert, attached to a later date. Both countries are simultaneously right and wrong. And just when you think that's the whole story, two researchers show up and detonate the entire argument. Around 2015, a New Zealander named Dr. Andrew Paul Wood and an Australian named Annabelle Utrecht did something neither nation asked for. They teamed up, a Kiwi and an Aussie, and went looking for the truth, reportedly determined to prove each other wrong. They spent 2 years digging through thousands of old cookbooks and newspapers, and what they found was a bombshell for both sides. They found more than 150 recipes for meringue and cream cakes, fruit on top, the whole thing, all published before Anna Pavlova ever set foot in either country. The trail led to Austria, to an 18th century dessert beloved by the Habsburg court called the Spanische Windtorte, layers of meringue, cream and fruit. From there it travelled with German-speaking immigrants to America as the Schaumtorte and the Besertorte, the foam cake and the kiss cake. And then, in the 1890s, American cornstarch companies started shipping packets to New Zealand with meringue recipes printed right on the box. So here's the answer nobody down under wants to hear. The pavlova probably isn't Australian, and it probably isn't a New Zealand invention either. The dessert the two countries have been fighting over for 90 years was most likely Austrian and German to begin with. It just got a Russian name, in the South Pacific, decades after it was already being eaten on the other side of the world. Two countries, 90 years of arguing, over a cake that belonged to neither of them. So before you head to the comments to defend your country anyway, and you absolutely should, the pavlova comment section is the most polite war on the internet, there's one more food fight you need to know about. It's an Australian icon this time, a cake named after a man who, according to legend, absolutely hated having his name on it. And its origin story is even murkier than the pavlova's. That one's coming next. I'll see you there.